Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Be Bold America. I'm your host, Jill Cody. And it sounds like we have some extra music going on in the background. We'll just keep... Christine's looking for it, so we'll keep going here. Pettis, hi. Are you there?
I am, Jill. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Do you hear that jazz in the background? Oh, I think Christine found it.
Yeah, I was getting into the groove with it.
You were getting in the groove. Well, I'll just say welcome to Be Bold America. I'm your host, Jill Cody, along with my co-host, Dr. Pettis Perry. Hey, Pettis, how are you?
I'm doing really well today, Jill, even though it's a rainy, sunshiny day up here in the Pacific Northwest.
Oh, it's 82 degrees down here. 82 degrees in Santa Cruz.
Neener, I know. Well, I think the rainy, sunshiny day is my theme song here in the Pacific Northwest. But I'm really looking forward to hearing what our guest today, Parker Malloy, has to say a little bit later in the show.
Me too.
For those of you who are just joining us, our program today is Cancel Culture, Weaponizing Voting, Dr. Seuss, Democrats, and Pizza. In a few minutes, our guest Parker Malloy from Media Matters will be joining the show. But before then, we thought we'd provide you with a little bit of background about cancel culture, what it is, and how Fox News got its start. Our future depends on it. So, my friend Jill, would you start us off by sharing with us a little bit about what cancel culture is?
Well, I'd be happy to, Pettis, because I actually looked it up in Wikipedia, and it said cancel culture is a modern form for ostracism, ostracizing a person or business in social media or in person. But thinking about that last few days, I think it's much more than that. I think it's really trying to take someone off the chessboard. And remember, you and I, Pettis, interviewed Governor Don Siegelman last year?
I do.
Yeah. Well, I thought he was an excellent example of being canceled because he went to bed one night. He was winning his reelection. The next morning, many votes were discovered in the Republican column. And then Karl Rove and the Alabama Republican Party and a corrupt judge was able to put Governor Siegelman in prison for many years because he was planning to run for president and challenge George W. Bush. So he was just taken off the chessboard. I think that is a way that cancel culture has been used. And I also believe we need to look at cancel culture through another strategy much more broadly, and that's canceling programs and policies and rights. For example, there's a force building in the country to cancel the voting ability of hundreds of thousands of people. Republicans have submitted 253 voter suppression laws in 43 states. And most recently, we heard what was in Georgia. Georgia's been hearing about the most dramatic action where it's now a felony to give somebody water standing in line. But I think the more insidious change in the law is that the Republican state legislature gave themselves the authority to cancel their constituents' votes if they didn't like the election results. So that's not democracy. That's absolute authoritarianism. And thoughts? Did you have something to say?
No, I was. My mind is beginning to wind up here, but go ahead, please.
Okay. So also, the state of Tennessee, the Republican legislature is drafting a law right now to cancel a woman's ability to make a decision about her pregnancy and giving the sole authority to the biological father. Even in the case of rape and incest, even if that biological father is in prison, they would have the total control over what would be happening with that pregnancy. So that's canceling equality for women. And then we've got the, Senate Republicans wanting to cancel the American Recovery Act. I mean, they didn't want to give additional assistance to cities or any funds to businesses or increase unemployment benefits. And so, they called it the COVID Act and just said it was 9%. COVID was just 9%, but it's really titled the American Recovery Act, and they all voted no. And another example is Affordable Care Act. The Republicans, for 60 votes in the Senate to try to cancel the Obamacare, American Affordable Care Act, and 2 attempts at the Supreme Court. They just wanted to wipe it off the books, just cancel it out. And I think also very seriously, Democrats are listed in the title of this program, weaponizing, because it's clear that Republicans want to cancel Democrats. I remember seeing in the 2016 presidential election, T-shirts that read "Better Russian than Democrat" and "Better Dead than Democrat." And now recently, CBS implemented a poll and discovered that Democrats view Republicans as the opposition, but Republicans view Democrats as the enemy. And the enemy. So what do you do to an enemy?
Yeah.
So
no, you wipe them out.
You wipe them out. You cancel them. And so it's keeping eyes on what's going on, and not just the people that they want to cancel. And this isn't Democrats aren't doing this. They aren't trying to cancel people's votes. They aren't trying to ruin people's reputations. Like Don Siegelman's. I don't know when a Democrat ever took down a governor. Maybe it's happened, but that's something that that we have to watch out for. And so, weaponizing cancel culture, it just keeps the money flowing. I think it keeps the eyes, for example, on Fox News or One American Network or Newsmax. It just keeps the eyes on the network, which means the corporate entity makes money and profits. The hosts make more money, and they give it up for telling the truth to benefit the country. They're just made rich by it.
Yeah, I agree with that. We're in a dangerous state because we can't tell truth from fiction. And we have, as you talk about, people that are actively engaged in trying to cancel the ability of any opposition to have a different way of being in terms of which direction the country is going to go in the future. Well, let me ask you this about Fox. What is Fox roles? Most people don't know, at least I didn't before you told me, Jill, that the idea of a Fox News type organization actually got its start with Roger Ailes in 1968. That blew me away. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, well, in 1968 is when we actually have records and documents that show it. It might have been tickling in his brain earlier than that. He was Nixon's campaign prepper for when Nixon did the debates on television with John Kennedy. And he started to realize the power of television and its propaganda usefulness. So, back in 1968, Roger Ailes sent then President Nixon a 2-page memo listing out 16 strategies to President Nixon on how television could be used as a right-wing propaganda tool. He literally said that, a right-wing propaganda tool. And he said, also, quote, "We have no obligation to tell the viewer anything not to our advantage." So, think between that lines. We don't need to tell them anything that's not to our advantage. Well, what is to Fox News' advantage? But as a corporation, is making money. And because Roger Ailes hated Democrats, his advantage was using it as a propaganda tool for the Republicans. And he treated journalism as politics and another way to market right-wing ideology and monetize it. That was very important to him, was to be able to monetize propaganda and Fox News. So his intent from the very beginning was to drive Americans apart. You're on my team. You listen to me, meaning Fox News. Give me your money. He created Wedge TV, and he used the airwaves to divide and conquer. That was his goal. That was the point of Fox News. And he believed that viewers didn't want to be informed, that they wanted to feel informed. Well, how does one feel informed? Maybe knowing something others don't, but that something more and more has been built on lies. So it got its roots in 1968. Now, President Nixon had his own problems, as we all know, and it never got started. He actually wanted it to be in the White House when he proposed it to President Nixon. But after Nixon, he found a billionaire, Rupert Murdoch. And Rupert Murdoch was able to lose money for a long time and buy deals with cable companies to have it listed in packages. And so everybody had it available. And it lost money for years, but they didn't care. So creating Fox News was always meant to be a propaganda cash cow.
Wow, that's a very powerful story. It's one that I think I'm going to look more deeply into, some of those facts that you stated.
Well, I read the book cover to cover, and it's one of them was the loudest voice in the room, which was Gabe Sherman, and it was made into a Showtime with Russell Crowe playing. I think Russell Crowe was played Roger Ailes. It was made into a Showtime special. But that book is a tome. It's huge and it's documented and it has many interviews with former Fox News employees. And then the other book that also explains all this is Hoax by Brian Stelter. Just
I've
for
seen
future reading.
Yes, no, thank you. I'm an avid reader. I have a voracious appetite for information, so I will look at those. So thank you for sharing that. You mentioned propaganda. How does Fox use questions for their propaganda?
Well, I'll just take a minute here because then we need to get to our wonderful guest. But, Fox News, even though it has news in its name, it's not a news station. As we know, it was always meant to be a propaganda entity, so news was part of that. Fox News doesn't have an ethics department, as all journalistic organizations do, from the New York Times to NBC or CNN, and they don't follow journalistic principles. So when the Dr. Seuss cancel culture started, they were showing books on screen that weren't going to be unpublished. They were showing books that were being published. They have no responsibility around that. His goal also was for the viewer to start believing that other media wasn't trustworthy. So in Gabe Sherman's book, he said, quote, "In a feat of messaging jujitsu, the slogan fair and balanced inferred the idea that rival networks practiced partisan spin when it was quite the opposite." And I saw that myself when I was in the gym one day, and the banner on the Fox News TV said fake news versus Fox News in the Chiron. And so it meant everybody else is fake except Fox. So
wow, that's amazing.
I know. I of course have some more, but right now we'll do our station identification. You're listening to Be Bold America on KSQD 90.7 FM. Many voices, one nation. Listen globally online from the ksqd.org homepage. You can listen to Be Bold America podcast from any device. Go to ksqd.org or at your favorite podcast platform. Here with my host, Pettis Perry, I'm Jill Cody.
Try to see it my way.
What to Be features college students interviewing creative, surprising, passionate people about their careers. If you have ever wondered what to be, please join us Sundays, 7 p.m., K-Squid, 90.7 FM.
Say goodnight. We can work it out. We can work it out. Life.
Today, our topic is cancel culture, weaponizing voting, Dr. Seuss, Democrats, and pizza. Our guest today is Parker Malloy. She's an editor-at-large at Media Matters, where she's worked since September 2018. She has a bachelor's degree in arts, entertainment, and media management from Columbia College, Chicago. She previously worked at Upworthy as a senior writer. One of her most recent Media Matter articles, the one we'll be discussing today, is Fox News, Dr. Seuss' obsession reveals the dishonest desperation of the right-wing war on cancel culture. Hey, Parker, are you there?
Hey, can you hear me?
I sure can.
Excellent.
Yay.
Excellent. It works.
It works, and welcome. So before we start talking about your article, just give us a minute on who Media Matters is and what do they do and how can people join and get your newsletter, that sort of thing.
Sure. So Media Matters is a left-leaning media watchdog organization, basically. So one thing we do is we watch a lot of right-wing media, whether it's Fox News or listening to right-wing podcasts or YouTube videos, reading Breitbart and Daily Caller and all of those types of websites. And
you have my sympathy.
Trying to correct some of the misinformation out there, or at least provide an alternate viewpoint, because that's kind of the thing. As you were saying in the leading up to this, it's sort of that Fox News taking a very propaganda-y type approach to everything, really. So in recent years, we've kind of branched out to monitor broader media.
So was Media Matters started by David Brooks? Wasn't he formerly a Republican?
I think it was David Brock.
I'm sorry, Brock. Thank you for correcting me.
He I'm not sure exactly on the total origin story there, but his story was something along the lines of he was very conservative and was kind of really involved in the right-wing messaging machine kind of thing, and had a big change of heart and sort of wanted to combat what he helped build, I guess. But I've never met him, and I don't think he hasn't been involved in the organization for a while. Well,
I do understand he did start it because of an epiphany he had about his role in creating the propaganda and wanted to counter it. And one of your sentences might have been right at the top of the article. You said it beautifully and succinctly, and I want to read it. You wrote, "To watch Fox News is to be immersed in a bizarre alternate reality ruled by tyrannical leftists who are obsessed with eliminating America's most treasured cultural artifacts, a world in which cancel culture ranks as a high priority in the mind of the average voter. It's a world of perpetual anger and grievance." I thought that was beautifully said. I could have written it better myself. So tell us more about what you wrote in your article.
So this article about Dr. Seuss, basically. So what happened? Just a very quick background on the whole Dr. Seuss controversy, I guess, is basically on Read Across America Day, which happens to be Dr. Seuss's birthday. Those things are typically tied together, and so on Read Across America Day, Dr. Seuss Enterprises, which is the group that owns the rights to all of Dr. Seuss's books, they put out a statement saying, "Hey, we've decided to stop publishing these 6 books," and they were lesser known Dr. Seuss books, basically. And so what happened was, these were they had very sort of problematic racial depictions in them, and so basically they decided to stop publishing them, but they've been in print for 60 years or whatever, so if you haven't had a chance to pick them up, I'm sure there are copies out there, and then so Fox,
I think they've been flying off the shelves, by the way. That's what I heard.
Yeah, well, I mean, and it's not the Grinch Who Stole Christmas or Cat in the Hat or Hop on Pop or any of the well-known ones. These were sort of, he wrote something like 60 odd books. So
wow,
these are not the well-known ones that have been turned into movies and cartoons and all of that. But so Fox basically took this story and started covering it obsessively. And the argument here was that this mob of politically correct people on the left must have forced Dr. Seuss Enterprises to take to take those books out of production and to no longer let those out in the world. And they covered the story over and over and over. And it came a week after they had just run segments on things like The Muppet Show was added to Disney Plus, the streaming service, which is great. First time The Muppet Show has been widely available in a long time. And at the start of a few episodes, they have like something like a 10-second little disclaimer just saying, hey, some things didn't age well, but just, we're leaving them in there FYI for, context. And, there were things like Johnny Cash singing in front of a Confederate flag or something like that. So they did that, and Fox kind of freaked out over that. And then a few days later, Hasbro, the toy company, they put out a press release saying that basically what they were doing is they were taking the Mr. Potato Head and Mrs. Potato Head toys and putting them under a broader Potato Head family sort of heading. So basically, Mr. Potato Head and Mrs. Potato Head still exist, but it's part of a larger group that they're just calling Potato Head. And so that got kind of misconstrued as them saying that Mr. Potato Head is no longer going to exist or something along those lines, or that they were eliminating Mr. Potato Head's gender. And I realize how ridiculous all of this sounds. But for Fox, that was these were very serious matters that they were covering and devoting a lot of time to. It was odd, and watching it, they just, as of yesterday, there were still segments showing up on Fox about Dr. Seuss and Mr. Potato Head and the Muppets, and this is their whole thing now. They obsess over cancel culture, which the idea here is people will complain that something that happened in the past is racist or sexist or homophobic or what have you, and then will demand that it be taken down and eliminated and pulled from public viewing. And it's treated as this problem that's been created by the left to try to silence conservatives and take away these things that are very, very important. And it kind of ties back into how social media companies had been Donald Trump got kicked off of Twitter. And so they were saying that's an example of cancel culture because he's the president and he shouldn't have been pulled off of Twitter no matter what he did. And there's a whole argument to be had there about whether or not that was the right idea for Twitter to do. But they tried to turn that into a big cancel culture sort of story. But if you look into it, the story of cancel culture essentially really ties way back to conservatives themselves. I mean, going into the Iraq War, you had the Dixie Chicks who criticized President Bush, and they were
I remember that now.
Blacklisted. And then at the beginning of the Trump administration, you had comedian Kathy Griffin had that mini scandal where she had a fake head of Trump that was covered in red paint or something, and people were like, how dare you suggest that he be beheaded, which is kind of, I mean, obviously she was doing it for, it was symbolic. It wasn't actually a threat to behead the president. But they pretty much she got fired from CNN doing their New Year's show, and she had to kind of disappear, and she was the subject of Secret Service investigations and the FBI, and she was on no-fly lists and stuff like that. So these things happen all the time where people on the right will see something, they will be outraged about something, and then they will they'll demand that it just be eliminated or pushed out of society, which in general is fair, is fine. People can argue that something is bad and shouldn't exist even. I can say, I can see a TV show and go, this TV show is terrible. I have no idea why it's even on the air, whatever it is that I'm watching. But, at the same time, it's like, because that's me using my First Amendment, right to free speech to criticize something. And so what they basically have tried to argue in recent years has been this idea that people shouldn't criticize anything because they're trying to silence someone else. But it's just, once you start getting into that, it becomes this battle of hypocrisy. I mean, because yes, there will be things that happen that upset people on the left, and they want to get someone fired for saying something, for making a homophobic comment or a racist comment. And yes, there will be something that will happen, that will upset conservatives. So these things happen, but Fox has taken this laser focused approach to it and really branded this as a problem that is coming exclusively from the left, which is an issue. I mean, because they've created this idea that if you don't adhere to every single viewpoint that is accepted by people on the left, that you will be driven out of society, and all this doom and gloom kind of thing. And I tried to push back on that in my article about Fox News obsession. And what I found was that it's one of those things that if you can obsessing over these really non-issues. This is not something a news organization should be covering, generally speaking, and especially covering all day, every day. But obsessing over these lies and non-issues, it's really a way to distract people from, news that doesn't fit their political agenda. I mean, COVID-19 cases are rapidly declining. Looks like we have more, we're ahead of schedule on vaccines, and the stimulus package that just passed by Democrats is one of the most popular bills in decades. So it's something where when news is bad for Republicans, they try to distract people from what is happening. And that's kind of Fox's MO. They will not tell you, not spend a lot of time talking about that.
Yeah, that's the shiny object syndrome.
Exactly. That's good.
Just look over here, shiny.
Yeah.
Well, after our next station break, you mentioned about it's important to understand the sources of misplaced outrage, and I wanted to ask you what those were. So if you're just joining us, you're listening to Be Bold America on KSQD 90.7 FM. Our topic is cancel culture, weaponizing voting, Dr. Seuss, Democrats, and pizza. Here with co-host Pettis Perry, I'm Jill Cody.
Hello, K-Squid listeners. I'm Tom Hartman, and each weekday at 4 p.m., I bring you a different perspective on the news than you're likely to hear on most media outlets. Please join me on KSQD Santa Cruz, your ink spot on the dial for the Tom Hartman program, heard now for the first time ever in the Monterey Bay area at 90.7 FM, weekdays at 4 p.m. That's progressive talking conversation with me, Tom Hartman, weekdays at 4 p.m. on KSQD 90.7 FM. Tag you're it.
We're back, and we're speaking with Parker Malloy, editor-at-large with Media Matters, and we're discussing her article, Fox News, Dr. Seuss Obsession Reveals the Dishonest Desperation of the Right-Wing Cancel Culture. So one observation I wanted to make, Parker, is that, Dr. Seuss, those decisions were made by a private entity that was responsible for managing Dr. Seuss's legacy, and the decision was made during the Trump era. Twitter, that's a private business. They made their decision. Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head, Hasbro, I think, is there. It's a private business, a corporation. made the decision. So, I thought Republicans supported corporate private enterprise.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot that is, the way that Fox and other right wing outlets will kind of deliver news to their audiences, they kind of gloss over some of the stuff like that, about how this was, there wasn't some big campaign to eliminate various books by Dr. Seuss. That wasn't something that there wasn't public pressure to stop printing 6 of those books. That's just something that Dr. Seuss Enterprises did, which, if you think about it, was probably, it makes sense for them as a business, to try to protect the legacy of Dr. Seuss. Obviously Dr. Seuss would much rather, they would much rather that Dr. Seuss be remembered as, the author of, the author of Cat in the Hat, or Green Eggs and Ham, rather than the guy who drew a really kind of, in hindsight, not so great depiction of Asian people or African Americans. These sort of things. There are just things that don't age well, and I think that we all kind of understand that. I mean, I've written things that I look back on and I'm like, I wish that I wish I worded something differently. I once interviewed the comedian Sarah Silverman, and she said to me, because I asked her about how she used to have, a lot of her jokes were very provocative, very, very, some people would be offended by them. And so one thing she said, because her comedy changed over the years, and she said that when she looks back at her work from, a decade ago, that she cringes thinking about that and looking at that. And she hopes that she always cringes when she thinks back, several years, because that shows that there's growth. And I think that that's a really interesting way to...
That's a very good point. Yes.
At it. Yeah. And it's that sort of idea with, Dr. Seuss. Dr. Seuss really changed over time. I mean, before he was writing children's books, he was writing political cartoons, which some of them were amazing and great, and really he had a big issue with the America First movement, which is funny that is what the Trump campaign kind of picked back up.
Well, I think he related it to Hitler's Germany First.
Right. Well, yeah.
Motto.
That was kind of, what Dr. Seuss would do. But then he also had some that were, defending Japanese internment, which obviously is not something that, that aged well. At the time, it wasn't great, but it's definitely not something that he wanted to be known for. And so he wrote all these other books, to try to spread a message of inclusivity and whatnot. And I'm pretty sure that if Dr. Seuss Enterprises was, had the option to print his old super offensive, political cartoons, or to not do that, they would choose not to do that. You can go on their website and you don't see those things, and people curate their own sort of experiences.
So, Parker, what are the sources of misplaced outrage that we should understand?
Sure. Well, I think what happens a lot of times is there will be something will be picked up on social media. Someone on Twitter will notice something, and then they will post it to their blog, which makes it to Fox. And then Fox is really the center of this sort of the right-wing media ecosystem, which there's really nothing on the left that compares to it, because they can do this thing where they can echo a story over and over and over, and to keep it in the news for weeks at a time if they want, while you don't see that on CNN or MSNBC or ABC or any of the other mainstream news outlets. And it's really this whole network of Fox and Breitbart and the right-wing talk radio, sort of Rush Limbaugh up until obviously recently. It's just this kind of echo chamber that they have telling them what they should be mad about and what they should care about. And I think we've sort of seen this in recent days with this renewed sort of focus on the border. And, with this big push to, try to get the Biden administration to say that it's a crisis. They really want him to say it's a crisis. And it's the same sort of thing that happened during the Obama administration when they were really pushing him to say, why won't he say radical Islamic terrorism? That was their big pushback then. And it's just this, and they focus on these code words, these special phrases, say radical Islamic terrorism, say border crisis, say, whatever it may be. And all of it is very narrative driven. So it's through repetition that they get their message through, and they can essentially poison any debate, any topic that they want, any piece of legislation. They can just keep hammering it home lies about it.
Well, they just try to keep creating moral panic.
Exactly.
Just, moral panic. You've got to be frightened about this, fear this, be outraged, feel like somebody's taking something away from you, your victim.
Yeah. It is, as I wrote in the piece, it is really just this, if Fox is the only place that you get your news, and for the most part, the people who watch Fox and trust Fox for their news, they only trust Fox. They are very distrustful of other news outlets, which is not the same thing that happens when you poll people who watch CNN as their primary source of news. Fox viewers have been conditioned, as you were saying, in the intro to this, about, be distrustful of everyone else. We're the ones telling you the truth. You can't trust you can't trust the outside world.
Fake news versus Fox News. Right,
yeah, exactly.
Right. Did you see The Brainwashing of My Dad by Jen Senko, Parker?
No, but it's, I read about that.
Well, I would highly recommend it to listeners and to you.
Yeah.
It is an amazing documentary because here's her father, who she deeply loved. He got a new job that required him to drive the car a lot, and he started listening to Rush Limbaugh and then turned on Fox News at home. And she and her mother started seeing a change in him. And he turned into a not very nice person, and would regurgitate the talking points from the right wing. The hours and hours he listened in the car, and the Fox News, and would regurgitate the talking points, and they were just felt a deep loss, grieved for him, because he was a very nice, loving man. And she explains all that in the documentary. And how they brought him back was they moved, and they told him that the cable company didn't have Fox News. And the mother went into his computer and got rid of all the email accounts that supported the right-wing world. And he, by this time, I guess they moved because he retired, so he wasn't in the car. And he returned to the person he was. And very loving and more tolerant of people of color, and, all of that. And they got him back, but they had to cut the cord. And I just thought, wow, the grip that Fox News has.
Well, and it's the same basic idea that you see with social media. It's this idea of keeping people constantly attached to the check your Facebook, check your Twitter, check your like all of these different accounts. Like, people are constantly going back and forth, and then getting these little they'll say something really provocative, and they'll get a bunch of replies, and that's tells their brain to be excited, basically.
And clicks are money. It's also money.
Exactly. So, I mean, when it comes to news, when it comes to understanding the world, it's good to obviously have a wide variety of sources, and anyone who is, really dug into this whole, Fox News, Rush Limbaugh, conservative talk radio, YouTube's, that sort of stuff. It's really kind of, it's walling people off into their own sort of corner of the world. And there are things on the left that are comparable, but on a much, much smaller scale, because there's no mainstream, there's no Fox News sized, outlet on the left doing that sort of thing.
Right.
But there are, podcasts and YouTube channels. But I think that the issue is just really kind of walling yourself off into this world where you have people who will tell you what you believe. Every suspicion you have is true. You everything you think is correct, and in fact, it's even worse. Mm-hmm. And then they'll kind of heap onto that, and that's kind of what Fox does, and that's what a lot of the more panicky kind of right wing media content is.
I call it the armor bubble, because you just can't even poke a hole in it. I really like my webmaster for my personal website. I really like him. He loves his cat Buppy. He has a great laugh. We have great conversations, and he's on the right coast in Florida, and I'm on the left coast. And when we start talking politics, he watches Newsmax, and there's no way I could drill a hole into that armor bubble around him. And he thinks that I've been, he thinks I've been lied to, and that I'm living in an armor bubble, and I think he is. And there isn't any way around that. And you were talking about that wall, and I did want to ask in the minute or two we have is, there used to be, before 60 Minutes, there was a firewall between the news organization and the rest of a station, whether it was a radio station or a television station. There was a news wall, because they didn't want news to be pressured in any way by sponsors or forced to say things that might not be accurate. There was that firewall. It was a principle of journalism. And it just seems to me we need to advocate for that again. They make terrific profits in the news media these days. They can let news be a loss leader, and start people understanding what the truth is. Is Media Matters working on anything like that?
One thing that we have at Media Matters, just kind of as our general, our general one of our projects, is basically this Unfox My Cable Box is the name of this, and it's unfoxmycablebox.com. So basically, what it is it's this website that basically tells you how to contact the cable companies that you have, your cable provider, and to ask them to not carry Fox News, because really what is happening is Fox is losing a lot of sponsors when they have someone like Tucker Carlson or Sean Hannity or Laura Ingraham. But they're doing okay financially, because we're all paying to keep Fox on the air.
That's right.
Because we pay the cable companies.
Because Rupert Murdoch made sure it was in that package. Well, Parker, this has just been fascinating. I could go on and on. I think, the point about they're getting people this moral panic and taking away your life and your lifestyle and what all you hold dear, and feeding that scarcity mentality overlaid with the outrage and grievance creates a really dangerous formula. And I don't know. I think Fox News and the rest of the right-wing media really needs to be dealt with, and it's a very, very big problem. So I love Media Matters. Listeners, go to unfoxmycablebox.com, MediaMatters.org. Parker, thank you for your time, and keep up the good work. It's really been an honor.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Our pleasure.
Thanks, Parker.
You're listening to Be Bold America on KSQD 90.7 FM, many voices, one station. Listen globally online from the KSQD homepage. If you want to contact either Pettis or myself, or have ideas for the show, you can email either of us at info@ksqd.org.
Buddhism, Judaism, Baha'i, Islam, Christianity, Hinduism. Sound interesting? Faith Matters is a unique bi-monthly program that explores spirituality, life, and meaning with local religious leaders. We discuss areas of common ground and also identify distinct differences among diverse spiritual perspectives. Join us on the second and fourth Sunday evening of every month from 6 to 7 as we have thought-provoking conversations about Faith Matters on 90.7 KSQD.
Hey, Pettis. Today our topic is cancel culture, weaponizing voting, Dr. Seuss, Democrats, and pizza. And I know you were listening to the conversation there. And one of the things that we like to talk about is, how to create a more meaningful life and a principle-centered life. And how does cancel culture or Fox News lead to a more principle-centered life?
Well, it could cause you to really rethink how you're living if you don't take the bait. Fox is an entertainment outlet. It's not a news outlet. So if people are looking at Fox for news, they're not going to get it. They're going to get, more of what they already believe. And I think that's at least part of what I heard from Parker. That was a fascinating conversation, Jill. Thank you for doing such a good job with it.
Oh, thank you.
I do have a couple of thoughts, if you don't mind.
Of
Can
course.
I share those now?
Of course. Go for it.
Well, as I was sitting there listening and thinking about cancel culture and what it means, to me, it seems that, we need to get real with this. And, I don't know about you, but from where I sit, the right projects their actions onto the left by accusing the left of the very things they themselves are doing. They're projecting. Trump was a master at doing it. And they use cancel culture to suit their needs. It's all about grievance and really nothing to do about the collective we. And that's really the tragic part. Their whole mantra is to demonize the opposition and to see the opposition as enemy. And the first thing they talked about when Trump was first being accused of during the impeachment, and you started hearing people on the right talking about exercising their Second Amendment rights, which they did on January 6th. We, as you were talking and with Parker, you mentioned the 253 or so legislative measures in some 43 states
To cancel votes.
To cancel votes, specifically at making it more difficult for people of color, the poor, disabled, and military to vote. That's what cancel culture looks like to me, at least. It's the ultimate cancel culture strategy by disenfranchising targeted groups with specific intention of taking away their rights to vote, and doing so while they're also blaming those very same targeted groups for acts that were perpetrated by organized, well-funded coalitions on the right who are themselves actively and openly engaging in those cancel culture behaviors. And I think you got to that when you were talking about the issues in Georgia. So, I think we have our work cut out for us. We're seeing what institutionalized racism looks like, what class warfare looks like, what supremacy and discrimination and domination look like. That's what cancel culture is about. It's one group taking away things from another group so that they can control them. If the Republicans had a great platform that they could offer people, they would do much better in elections without all of the machinations they go through to keep people away from the ballot. And that's really the issue. All this other stuff is really, it's window dressing. What are your thoughts?
Well, tying it to the attack on the Capitol, when I was studying up for this interview, one of the things that Roger Ailes wanted to create with Fox News was a self-contained thought system that made mocking of liberals fun. And he believed that Fox didn't need to relate both sides of a story, just the other side. So what is the other side? Anything that Roger Ailes or Rupert Murdoch thinks needs to be said. So they created a self-contained thought system to mock liberals, but it went way past mocking liberals. Roger Ailes was heard to say he hated Democrats because they hate America, they hate capitalism. And he said this literally, Roger Ailes said, beat the shit out of them. Well, viewers have heard this attitude for 20 years on Fox. A subliminal message, if not outright messaging. And he was very successful in creating this self-contained thought system to a point, I think, that it played a significant role in the January 6th attack on the Capitol. His goal to mock Democrats passed fun to demonization a long time ago and created the enemy. And that's, there they are yelling out Nancy Pelosi's name.
Yeah, it really is. The first thing you do when you want to go to war is to demonize your enemy. And they have, as you noted in your discussion with Parker or before, that the whole idea on the right is to make the opposition the enemy. And when you do that, then you have all of the tricks of the trade to marginalize, dehumanize, and to feel good about what you're doing because you're overcoming the enemy that you've created in your own mind. So it's a very dangerous proposition, and it very well could lead to more destructive behaviors. And at some point, people on the left are not going to continue to just stand by and allow these things to happen, because we're talking about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness in very real terms.
Well, you mentioned demonization, and Peter Slevin had a recent article in the New Yorker about the demonization of Democrats in the 2020 election. And he said the demonization and disinformation is still happening. And a quote from that article, he said, "A central lesson is that facts matter little when the opposition chooses demonization over debate, and pivotal groups of voters stick to what they think they know." And that last point struck me because sticking to what they think they know struck a chord, because Roger Ailes, quote, said, "Viewers don't want to be informed, they want to feel informed."
Well, there are people that want to be spoon-fed what they should think. But I live in a world in my professional work, as part of my job is to teach people how to think critically. And the idea of listening to one source for all of anything is not a good idea. We have to, if we're going to get at truth, and this is really what I think we're talking about here, truth doesn't matter to a large segment of the population. What matters is winning. It is the game. You can cheat, do whatever you have to do. Just win, baby. Just win. And that's problematic for a society, because at that point, you have one group that's trying to talk and the other group that's trying to take.
Well, Trump's father, Fred, taught Trump, he said, and I got to make sure I get this right, there aren't winners and losers. There are losers and killers.
Yep. And that's an attitude that is completely destructive. You can't tell your children that and then expect them to grow up to be human, wholesome, well-adjusted people. You just can't do it.
I feel actually some sympathy for the people that listen to right-wing media and the messages, because it must make for a very unhappy life. When we're talking about creating a meaningful life, living in scarcity, living in fear, living angry, living with outrage, feeling like something's happened to you, but you know somebody did it, but you don't know who, and you lash out.
Exactly.
It's a very unhappy way to live.
Well, people who are traumatized, and I'm not saying that everybody who's angry is traumatized, although I think I could make a case that there's at least some trauma in the mix, become angry. Anger is one of the after effects of trauma. Mm-hmm. Now, if you've been abused, assaulted, and things like that, you have a right to be upset, and you will get angry over time. The game in life is to work through that anger and to try to find other ways of being, because anger doesn't serve anybody well.
No.
And in fact, it's completely destructive.
Now, Pettis, listening to this, did you have some keep, stop, starts for our listeners?
Yeah, I do. The ones for this week, it's through activism that change occurs, right? So just look at what the people on the right are doing. They're very active through whatever means they have, and they're trying to push their agenda, and their agenda is taking up much of the oxygen that's in the air.
We have about 30 seconds, Pettis.
I got it.
Okay.
So
I
keep
close
doing
out the show. There you go.
Keep an open mind. Stop doing pretending that these issues are someone else's problems to solve, and start doing pick your issue and actively get involved, trying to create a new, reimagined America that works for everybody.
I love that. I want to thank Be Bold America's program engineer, Christine Barrington, and Howard Feldstein, KSQD's program director, and give another big thank you to today's terrific bold guest, Parker Malloy, editor-at-large with Media Matters. Coming next, on Sunday, April 11th, we will have the pleasure of speaking with Captain Pete Bethune, discussing endangered species and finding life's meaning. This is a special Earth Day program, and our interview guest is the founder of the nonprofit Earth Race. Captain Pete Bethune is from New Zealand. He has been run over by Japanese whalers, shot at by illegal gold miners, knifed in the chest while following illegal pet trade, and most recently nearly died after being bitten by South America's deadliest snake. We will chat with the captain to find out why he continues his conservation work when he and his team face such daunting risks, and his philosophy to find a cause worth dying for, which is a TED Talk that he gave not too long ago. So please join Pettis and me for this special Earth Day show on Sunday, April 11th at 5 p.m. You're listening to KSQD 90.7 FM, Santa Cruz. Many voices, one station. Listen worldwide online at ksqd.org. Stay tuned for Faith Matters with Seth Shapiro. My name is Jill Cody.
And I'm Dr. Pettis Perry.
Thank you for listening to Be Bold America. Until next time, keep, stop, start.